graduated from high school in 1966 and
Yeah.
went to the University of Washington. Didn't really want to, but did it to stay out of the draft.
Really?
And
Okay.
yeah, I mean that was what a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Because well, that was just something that we were looking.
So you went.
We're,
I'm sorry. So you went to university, and a key motivation was not to get drafted.
yeah, but you knew ultimately that's what you should do. But
Right,
that was the key motivation.
Wow.
And I was like a lot of kids. I wasn't ready for it. I was just partied and didn't pay attention. And we were on quarters at that time, and the first quarter came to an end, and I think I had 9 credits and about a 1.8 GPA, which meant you weren't going to stay long. And
Yeah.
if you didn't get past 12 credits, 2 quarters in a row, you were going to get drafted.
Wow.
So I started looking around. I knew that we were involved in a war, and I knew that I really didn't want to be part of it, but I knew that, just based on background and, grew up in the 50s and with the communists saying they were going to take us over and this, that, and the other, and everything we got in history class and what have you was all American, U.S. based.
Sure.
So if you weren't really paying attention in the mid-60s, or the super elite were the ones that had a lot more exposure and were questioning. That's when the questions really started to begin.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't there, so so I went looking around for a program to get into rather than get drafted.
Yeah.
So I wandered into an Army recruiter's office looking for the reserves.
Okay.
And here I was 19 years old, I guess, at that point. And the recruiter told me, he said, well, this isn't the reserves are backed up, but how would you like to be an officer? And I go, what? What? Well, what it was helicopter pilot. Was the warrant officer program. You didn't have to have a college degree at that time, and I thought, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And so I took the test and went through the motions, and I was leaving the next day. And
For training.
Yeah, for
Or
training.
boot camp,
Signing up and
yeah.
And I asked him, I said, if I do this, what are my chances of going to Vietnam? And he told me the truth,
100%.
which was 99.9 or something. There was a fluke. It would be you might be able to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I said, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not.
Now, what year is this, by the way?
This was 1967.
Okay, 67.
It was 67 because I'd finished the first quarter in college and knew I wasn't going to make it. So this is why I was trying to do something.
Okay.
And then I heard about the Navy program, and it seemed interesting. 2 years. It was really a year of meetings, 2 years of active duty, and then 3 years of meetings after that. So I went down, and I was able to get in. So I thought, oh, great. So when I took the test, for what I was going to do, I'd been a Boy Scout, so I knew the Morse code. And my hearing was good at the time, so when they gave me the Morse code test for radioman, I did well in it, so they said, you should be a radioman. So, okay, that sounds good. So when I was going to meetings, I went to electronics school and radio school, while the rest of the people were sweeping floors or mopping decks or whatever the words were that the Navy used.
Made you feel a little special?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I knew our radio was air conditioned and all that, so that would be because they had to keep it the temperature controlled. So about 6 months into the first year, whoever they is, said, hey, because the Marines took Navy corpsmen.
Right.
That was their corpsmen. They didn't have them. And they said, the Marines are starting to take Navy radiomen in the field. That didn't sound very good to me. So I told them, look, I don't want to be a radioman anymore. I'll be a bosun's mate. I'll chip paint for 2 years. I'll learn how to tie knots.
Sort of the grunt of the Navy.
Yeah, the grunt. I'll do anything. But I'll be on a ship at the worst case out in the Gulf of Tonkin, I'd go to all those ports and do all the wonderful things that the Navy's supposed to have you do.
Yeah.
So I that's what I did. Well, when I went active duty, it was in February of 1968. So everything was ramping up at that time.
Right
I mean,
after
that was the
Tet
that was the big year of escalation in troops and what have you. And we when we got our orders, it was for the Mobile Riverine Force, but I didn't know what that was. I mean, it was a fairly new group. I thought it was I thought it was Swift boats,
Right.
and then I thought it was the PBRs, which were the fiberglass boats, and I didn't really know what I had until I got to Mare Island in March the 1st, I think it was.
San Francisco area.
Yeah, the San Francisco area. That's where we trained.
Yeah.
When we got our orders, I'd been active duty for 13 days, and they gave us 21 days of leave, or they asked us if we wanted it, and I said, yeah, because we weren't going to have leave after we finished training.
Wow. Yeah.
So I said yes, and so I went home, and I was living in Seattle, or gone to school in Seattle, of course, and I thought about what I should do, but the bourgeois upbringing and history, and watching people put in bomb shelters in their backyards in the 50s, and Khrushchev banging on the table, saying we're gonna overcome and what have you. So I thought, well, luck of the draw or bad luck of the draw, I'm gonna go. I mean, what can I do? So we went to training, and a bunch of dumb kids. In 1968, there was no PowerPoint. There were no. I think they just had overheads, as I recall, and I'm not even sure they used many of those. But the Marines trained us, and they did a fabulous job. From a kid questioning what they were going to do, to when we were finished trained, we were going to go win the war. I mean, we were badasses. We thought we were.
Yeah. So you transitioned from wanting to avoid the war almost no matter what, to now it sounds like you're a little gung-ho.
Oh, absolutely gung-ho. I mean, we had cigarette lighters in our division, and we all had them engraved. Of course, everybody smoked back in those days. Was it live by chance, love by choice, kill by profession, Mobile Riverine Force. That's in Vung Tau. In the Brown Water Navy, there was Task Force 115, which was the Swifts, PCF boats. Task Force 116 was the PBRs, the fiberglass boats, and we were Task Force 117, which was the Mobile Riverine Force. There were four units, River Squadron 9, 11, 13, which I was in, and then 15 followed. 9 and 11 were there first, and then we came after that. Our boats were brand new, so they came over, and they came over on a commercial ship and went up to Saigon and unloaded them, and then we drove down to Vung Tau, and we were outfitting them there. Of course, it's very hot.
And humid.
And humid, and and all that. So we were painting them and putting our numbers on, and putting the Red Cross on the flight deck and all that. So.
Now, what was the basic mission of the boat that you were on?
Well, the Mobile Riverine Force was the Navy that did the boats, and the 9th Infantry Division. And there were several battalions. They lived on large ships, which were in the big rivers. We tied up to the ships, and it was search and destroy. Most of the time, there was some intelligence that there was a Viet Cong or NVA group, and we would load the troops on and go. And the purpose of that was the Delta had very few roads, and helicopters were still used, but they could take 6 to 8 guys on a helicopter. We could take 40 on an armored troop carrier. And if you had 10 boats with 40 people on, that's a lot of people that you could move and get way up in the small canals and what have you. And we put them in kind of like Normandy. I mean, the boats were very much like that. And they'd make the sweep, and then we would patrol and provide fire support, and we check the sampans and what
Yeah.
have you for contraband and papers.
So the main mission of your boat then was basically the main mission is to take the soldiers out, drop them off, pick
On
them
search
up,
and
but
destroy.
then also search
Yeah,
and
and then
destroy
move them
missions,
around,
move 'em around, and then also
uh,
provide assistance, provide fire support from the
fire
from
support.
the river.
And then the later boats like mine all had helicopter flight decks on them, so we could take a Huey
Yeah.
UH-1 dust off.
Yeah.
So the early boats didn't have that.
Mm.
Only one or two had flight decks, so they were the medical boat. All of our boats could be medical boats because they
Yeah.
could land
Sure.
anywhere. And so
Right.
instead of being transported from where you had a problem somehow to the medical boat to
Yeah.
be medevaced, they could just come in to whatever boat was
The
in
helo
trouble.
could land, pick up the wounded.
Correct.
So when we're talking about dropping off troops, but then picking them up, then sometimes that means picking up wounded.
Oh yeah,
picking
yeah.
up
Oh
all
sure,
wounded
sure. Yeah,
soldiers and
yeah.
also
Exactly.
some
Yeah. And they usually
some
get them
didn't
out
make it.
pretty fast. You know,
Yeah.
there were times when they couldn't. That's Mike Barbita. He was from Redwood City, California. He was an unusual guy, and actually the snake wasn't his. It was our boat captain brought it on board.
Just found it out in the field somewhere? or
Yeah,
something, or-
yeah. I
Was
think
it a
the Army guy
python or something?
brought it and said, "You want it?" And he said, "Yeah." And so they made a cage for it and
Oh, boy.
fed it rats and things like that. So,
Really?
yes, there were a lot of snakes,
Yeah.
leeches and things like that.
Yeah.
It didn't affect us as much as it did the Army guys. You know, we didn't have a great job.
Right.
The Army guys had it worse than we did.
How about mosquitoes?
Oh, tons.
Yeah.
You know, when you see all the helmets, you'll see the mosquito repellent there. And we were supposed to have lived, what you're looking at there is part of the mobile Riverine base. The initial plan was that, well, all the Army guys lived on that, and they ate and showered and what have you, laundry.
Yeah.
They didn't have room for us, even though on paper, that's where we were supposed to be too.
Oh.
But we had to live on our own boats.
Boy.
So I mean, there was no air conditioning, there was no nothing.
Oh,
So
boy.
you just on a little cot that folded down, and
Down below.
in the well deck. So
Oh, gosh.
that's an Alpha boat. There were 8 Alpha boats in each river division. No, 8 total in the there was. I was in River Division 132. 131 was the other one. So each 131 and 132 each had 4 Alpha boats. They were primarily minesweepers.
Oh.
That boat was actually designed and built for the Mobile Riverine Force. The other ones were reconditioned
Adapted to it.
from other existing Navy boats.
Now, are those explosions I see in the background? I haven't noticed those before, but it looks like.
Yeah,
huge.
you know, it was really interesting. You'd see that all the time, but then you'd be completely in a safe situation, or you'd be in a village maybe, and you'd see things going on. It'd be artillery or bombs or
So-
yeah. I mean, there you go. I mean, you can see them.
So when you took.
But
this
that was
photo-
not. We were not in combat there.
Right.
We were
When
not
you-
in combat at that.
When you took, do you remember? Was it the boat you took the picture of, or the explosions in the background?
I actually think it was both.
Oh, okay. it was
And I
both.
did,
Okay,
because I
so
did
okay,
try to
okay.
take, if you, you know, a lot of pictures of what it was like,
Sure.
and buses and people and
Right,
kids
yeah,
and that. So it was both.
So you could be carrying on a casual conversation, but a half mile. I mean, that doesn't.
Or mile or
a mile
oh
away.
yeah.
You've got explosions going on, and you
Mhm.
just carry on. You almost get used to it.
Mhm.
Wow.
When we landed in Saigon, you know, was after Tet, but you know,
Yeah.
people were on the street, but there was fighting going on, not near us. I mean, we just sat on the street and waited all day because nobody knew who we were, where we were supposed to go. But you could look out and you could see planes
Yeah.
dropping bombs, and the people didn't even react to it.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Gosh, I guess for people in the country, they've been fighting since what, the 40s, huh?
Well,
Or even
before,
before,
yeah,
even
even before that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they'd been fighting forever. So
Yeah.
they were
Golly.
case hardened, I guess, is. That's the 9th Infantry that we've let them off, and they're going on one of their sweeps.
Now, is
And you can
that,
see the water. I mean, that's a rice paddy
hmm
that they're wading through, and they're.
Now, is that guy way out front because he's on
He's the
point?
point. He's the
He's on
point.
point.
Yeah, he's the
Yeah.
point man.
Mm.
A lot of people like to be a point. You know, we was talking to
Really?
them. You know, I wouldn't. I
No,
don't think,
wouldn't
but.
want that job.
Because of the booby traps and things like
Yeah.
that, and snipers. I mean, there's trees back there.
Exactly.
There were lots of snipers. He could trip a mine. Another thing, he could trip a mine and be past it, and it blew back
Goes back.
towards the group. That was another reason why some guys liked the point.
So the VC would figure that out, right? The VC
Yeah,
figures that out,
yeah,
right?
they'd figure. Sure. They
Yeah,
were pretty
yeah.
smart. I mean,
Pretty
those
smart
guys were very, very smart, very,
Yeah.
very tough. So.
Wow.
The point man usually wouldn't, unless it was a punji sticks or something, you know, the pits
Right, yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah,
But if
the
it was
traps.
if it was an IED, he wouldn't get it.
You said that your attitude had kind of changed, and you know, when you knew that you were going, you felt kind of gung ho.
Well, the training,
The
the
training-
training
the
was
training made you
absolutely
feel gung-ho.
incredible,
Yeah.
and you know, it was very focused on
Yeah,
the mission,
sure.
but we bought into it.
Yeah.
I mean,
How long did it take for that to wear off, or did it ever?
3 months.
About 3 months.
I'd say 3 months. It was really waning because when you saw all the black market stuff, and you know, when you worked with the Vietnamese, they weren't committed. There were certain Vietnamese groups like the Marines, and Vietnamese Marines were pretty good. Some of the ARVN were good, but many of them weren't. And then there was the Rough Puffs, the RFPFs. I remember the first time we carried them, they just stole everything. Stole our knives, our mosquito nets, our
Then it goes on the black market.
sunglasses. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
gone in it. Yeah, and then you're out the next time, and a sampan comes up that's got beer and whiskey and
Knives.
and sunglasses and
And there wasn't a
mosquito
save.
nets and stoves, little
So
stoves.
you back
And
the
they had
stuff that
everything.
The rough puffs had ripped off,
yeah.
ripped off from you.
Yeah.
So that weird feeling that so we're here to help these people defend their country, but I don't have the feeling that a lot of them care.
That they're really
Yeah.
that they're just want to live. I think
Yeah.
that's really what they wanted,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they were taking advantage of the American forces
Sure.
and money and training and
Taking what they could
yeah.
while they could, and
yeah.
not
Yeah.
not necessarily thinking 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road.
Yeah, so 3 months, you know, you started seeing it. 6 months, you said, there's no way we can win this.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Wow.
I hadn't reached the anti-war at that point, but we knew we were in a losing situation,
Wow.
and we just wanted to get out.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
motivation.
Wow.
Then when I got through with it, and then went back to college and got a lot more exposure, and there were more tools and what have you. Then you started questioning whether we should have been there in the first
At all.
place.
You were saying that by the end of 3 months in country, you were kind of beginning to doubt the situation.
Yeah, we were losing our
Yeah.
gung-ho-ness.
Yeah.
We were going into a survival mode at that point.
Yeah, seeing that even South Vietnamese soldiers, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them didn't seem to be very devoted to the cause. Stuff is getting stolen from you and then sold in the black market. And then by 6 months, you said that, that the situation just didn't seem winnable.
Yeah.
But you've got 6 months to go at that point. So what was the strategy for, I mean, just carrying on.
We had
6
no
months.
control of that. I mean,
Yeah.
you were there. I mean, you
Yeah.
couldn't. You had to do it. You just had to do it, and you had to just grit your teeth and hope that nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
In the absence of commitment to the cause, or maybe better to say, recognition that the folks, whose cause it is, I mean, a lack of commitment on their part. They don't seem to be committed to this thing. Why should I be? And that makes perfect sense.
well, the big problem was when you got ambushed, and we were trained because our boats didn't go very fast. We were armored and had a lot of firepower.
Yeah.
Was just shoot. So that's what we did. I mean, I started up in the coxswain's flat, but ended up in the well deck as a 50 caliber gunner. And the first firefight I was in, they had 100 round boxes, belt. You had a 100 round belt in a box, and that was on your gun mount. Well, you can, they teach you to fire in bursts. No, you don't fire. And that 100 rounds goes out fast. So I figured it out. That I could take a 20 millimeter cannon box, position it next to the gun, and put a 600 rounds in before you had to, get up there and take it and put it in. And we would just lay on the guns. We would just absolutely, and the barrels would get red because you figured the whole deal was the more we put out, the less likely the enemy's going to jump up and get you.
So would this be sometimes preemptive firing, or you'd take?
Oh,
some
we did that
sniping
too.
then?
Oh, yeah. We did that too.
Okay.
But we'd get ambushed. I think 15 or 16 times I was in an ambush. You were, but you weren't. You knew if you were getting hit. If you were the one, and sometimes there'd be 2 or 3 that they would hit.
Yeah.
And if you were getting hit, you knew it.
Because of the explosion.
Yeah, it was rockets.
Yeah,
Rockets were, and recoilless rifles were their firearm of choice, instrument of choice.
Yeah.
Because that would do a lot of damage. And they would actually go right through the boat and pick up steel, because the boat was steel, and throw that all over the place. And so when you heard, you knew the sound, and you heard it wherever you were in the column. So you started shooting because you didn't know. You didn't know.
And often you're just shooting into bush.
Shooting in the bush. That's exactly, because that's where they were.
Sure.
Were in the bush, and they were in bunkers, and things like that. So you had tracers, so you could see your tracers. You'd guess where they might be, and
you can see their traces.
Our tracers and their tracers.
Yeah.
Both.
So
Theirs were green. Ours were red.
Theirs are green. And
Ours were
yours
red.
are red. So the gung-ho-ness for the cause isn't there, but obviously in that situation,
you still had to. Your training kicked in, and you.
And your commitment is there.
And actually, like I say, I went from 100 rounds to 600 rounds.
Yeah.
That would further protect me and us.
Yeah.
And everybody else did.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the commitment becomes
survival.
Purely about survival.
Purely survival.
Me, the guy next to me, this boat, this crew.
Right.
These guys who are relying on me.
Put out as much lead as you can.
Yeah.
And
that's not what you had in mind when you signed up for the Navy, huh?
Absolutely not. And the 50s have a long range. I mean, they're very powerful.
Yeah. And
the mobile Riverine force inadvertently shot up a couple of villages.
Oh.
It was the Viet Cong. I will assume it was Viet Cong. Set. Here was the village, and they set up a big ambush, and you're going to shoot based on your training, and you shot up a couple of villages.
Sometimes they would do that intentionally.
It was intentional.
Actually, create more insurgents.
Surely. Absolutely. Yeah. Look, these guys are bad. You need to be on our side. You need to help us. They're not here to help you.
Yeah. Wow.
So we were theoretically not after that supposed to use our 50s unless we got approval.
Mm.
And I can remember when something would happen, I would look up into the coxswain's flat, and Michael Rowe, who was driving the boat, he'd go.
And he was the...
There was no approval. There was no approval. You
Yeah.
just did it. I mean,
Yeah,
you
right.
just did it. I mean,
Right.
we were kind of
Sure.
sitting ducks. So
I mean, how fast could that thing go? Even when you got it cranked up?
really cranked up,
Yeah.
7 knots.
Which in miles per hour, what would that be? I don't even... I
5
have no
miles an
idea.
hour, 6 miles an hour.
You could walk faster than that.
Oh yeah, it was like a tank. I mean, it was like a tank is what it was, except on the water.
Man.
So no, it was slow. So we,
Now, did your boat get hit sometimes when you had the Army guys on it?
oh
Hitting-
yeah, surely, yeah.
Now, would they come out then and join the firefight?
Oh yeah,
or-
yeah, sure. Well, they were in the well deck, so they would.
Okay.
We had a 50 on each side in the well deck, and then we had 2 30s caliber machine guns and 2 30 caliber machine guns on that side.
Yeah.
So they would. I mean, I would always go to a 50.
Yeah.
They would go to the 30s, and then they'd put up their
They
M6,
had their own
M60s and M16s. So again, we were putting out because they knew
Yeah.
what it was like to get hit on the
Sure.
boats. They didn't. A lot of them didn't like it because you're so
You're just kind of
you're trapped.
Yeah.
You're trapped. I mean, you're just
Yeah, yeah. Just a question on a topic that's come up in other discussions. Did you ever hear anything from the Army guys about the M16s jamming that you remember?
Well, they did early on,
Yeah.
and then they changed the magazines, and then
Okay.
then we had M16s on our boat too. We had four,
Oh, okay.
four, and then in the back, and we had 2 20-millimeter cannons and a Mark 19 grenade launcher,
Yeah.
which was a machine gun that shot grenades.
Wow.
That was pretty interesting. Everybody knew you just put 18 rounds in a 20-round clip, and that solved the problem. And now you had to clean them. You had to clean them,
Keep
and you
them
had to
clean.
keep
Okay.
all your guns had to be cleaned.
Yeah, yeah.
But
course, for the guys
no
with
one
the bugs
complained
and
about
stuff.
the jamming after when I was there.
Oh,
Now
okay.
that all happened
A
before.
little bit
They
earlier.
didn't come over with those until 1965 or 6, I think.
Okay.
The first group just had M1s and M14s
Yeah,
when they first
yeah,
went,
Yeah,
and they were just way too heavy for
yeah.
what they were trying to do. So
Boy.
no, and,
Okay.
and we used those. We used when we were search sampans. Usually a person would have an M16 and one person would have a shotgun.
Yeah.
So
And what, a shotgun?
a shotgun, yeah.
Yeah,
The person who was up close, looking in and looking at stuff, would have a shotgun. That's me
Yeah.
painting Tango 13211 on that's the ramp that dropped down. But you had to have your number in several places on the boat, so
Oh, okay.
you could be identified.
Okay.
I don't know why I was given that task.
Oh,
That's the Program 5 Tango boat, armored troop carrier. But
Similar mission to your?
that's what I was on.
That's
That's not my boat,
okay.
but I was
that's-
on. That's what Tango 132-4. I was on Tango
I see.
132-11.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it looked just like that.
That's it.
And the well deck, you can see the guns in the well deck there.
Right, yeah.
And the troops there was a ladder in the front,
Right.
and they would come off the pontoons at the Mobile Riverine base, load on the boats,
Okay.
and we'd take them off.
Now, where did you sleep? You slept on this thing.
What you see the cover,
Yeah.
the tarp there?
Yeah.
They were right. We had 7. There were 7-man crew, and that's where we slept. Was right there.
So no, I mean,
No cover, no nothing. Just
no cover from the mosquitoes and all that.
no, except for a mosquito net.
Oh,
The
man.
and the mosquito nets worked. I mean, they
Yeah.
were, and you'd put on the whatever they called it. I can't remember what they called it.
Deed or whatever. But
Well, it was
whatever,
deed, I'm
yeah,
sure. Or
whatever,
who
something
knows?
I guess
And it
that's-
worked pretty well. But and then with the mosquito net, and it was hot. But what are you going to do?
Yeah,
You just kind of got used to it.
I guess so.
Didn't like it, but you got used to it. We were probably throwing when the kids and people would come down. When we were going someplace.
Yeah.
And we would always, they'd be begging, and we'd throw sea rations to them.
Okay.
Mostly sea rations, the ones we didn't like.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's what they're scrambling for.
Okay.
Sometimes we were a little bit mean, and we'd throw them so they'd have to run for them and stuff like that. But it was like a game,
Sure.
and that's what's happening there.
Okay. Same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing,
Just
yeah.
the kids are coming up to the boat.
Mm-hmm. That's just a village.
Now, when you're going by these villages, you take sniper fire occasionally from these things, or?
On occasion, but usually sniper fire was when you were traveling, because if there was a sniper there, they'd catch him.
Sure.
If somebody started shooting at you there, you'd go right in after them
Oh, I see.
and probably get them.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that would have been dangerous for an enemy to
Yeah.
snipe from there.
Did you just assume when you're going by, you see the folks in the, I don't know if hooch is the right word or
Yeah,
whatever.
those are hooches. Yeah,
Okay,
those
so
are hooches. Yeah.
If
In 'em.
you see those folks, do you just assume that a lot of these folks, if nothing else, are providing intelligence to the VC?
Yeah,
You
and
just assume that.
they probably weren't going to shoot at you, so that was okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you never knew who they were, what they were, or
Yeah.
what they were going to convey.
You don't know who's friend or foe.
Mhm.
Same kind of thing. There's that thick bush that goes along the river
Yeah,
there.
the
and-
nipah palm or whatever they are. Yeah,
Yeah.
nipah palm, I think is what they were called. And that's just a Vietnamese junket going to market, carrying stuff to market. Those would be the kind. Well, sampans we'd check, but
Yeah.
those would always get checked.
Yeah. Did you sometimes find boats that had
Not
stuff
food
on it?
mostly, rice,
Food,
and that was one of the keys to look for. Was if there was a whole bunch of rice, it was probably going
to the VC?
to the VC. Yeah,
And
that
then
was
what would you do with it?
dump it.
Really?
If they had papers, all you could do was dump it. If they had papers, you couldn't shoot them or
Right,
anything
sure,
like that.
yeah.
So you would. I don't know that we ever caught weapons or
Right,
explosives or rockets
Sure.
on a boat.
Yeah. I imagine
Mainly it
after
was
a
just
while,
food
Yeah.
or medical
So if
supplies.
there's what seems to be an inordinate amount of food, then that's suspicious.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there's this photo that you and I. You don't recall specifically what this is.
I'm sure
but-
I took it. I'm sure I took it because it was a dead person.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
I thought about it,
Yeah.
and we did see that on more than one occasion.
Mm.
So I'm sure I took it. See, this guy's standing off back, looking. He doesn't want to get too close.
Yeah.
So probably something the guy's got mud all over him, so he
Yeah.
could have been in the little canal there. It's hard to say,
Hard to
but I'm
say.
sure that's why I took it.
But you said that, through your year in Vietnam, I mean, this isn't the only time you saw this
Dead
kind of
people.
thing.
Oh no, we saw
I mean,
it.
and not necessarily always related to combat, or
Oh no, usually it was combat.
okay. So
The
it's been-
it usually was combat.
Sure.
And it would be that someone who got left, or they couldn't get, or
Right.
maybe we were closing in on them, and
Yeah.
they were artists at escaping. Well,
Yeah.
if they couldn't take somebody, they
So
might
would-
just leave
they'd
them.
leave
Yeah.
'em. After a while, do you get to a place where you notice, but you don't notice anymore? After 8,
Numb, you
9,
mean?
10 months,
Numb?
you get numb to it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. And you kind of got to the point where you knew when you were going to get in trouble or not. Not always, but you would. Well, I'll give you an example. I don't know if you want to hear this or not.
Go for it.
I got dusted off to Cu Chi, and
Meaning a helo came and
yeah,
got you?
came and got me.
Yeah.
And I had a head injury, and I had a big bandage on my head.
What was the head injury from?
Got in a rocket attack. There's big concussion when those things happen,
Yeah.
and even if they if they hit near you and explode, I mean, you're not going to be able to stand there.
Wow.
You know, it's going to throw you
Yeah.
down, and it hit my head,
Yeah.
and started, big gashes in the back, and so when I was there in the hospital for 3 days, and they said, "Well, you're ready to go. Go find your unit." I had no idea where the unit was, so I just went out to the airport and made a guess.
At Tensonet?
Well, I was in Cucci, and I
Cucci,
flew
okay.
to Tonsanut,
Okay.
and here was my logic. I thought I'll get a ride with the Army guys out to Cholan, which is right on the edge of town.
The Chinatown area. Yeah.
And there's an Army base there and a guard tower and all that.
Yeah.
And we had been operating out of a little town called Na Bay, which was
Okay.
in the Rung Set special zone. That was a pretty difficult area.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, if I'm here in front of the guard tower, a Viet Cong's not going to pick me up. So I hitchhiked.
Mhm.
And I got in a little jitney and rode 15 miles to Na Bay.
That's probably not very
No
smart.
gun. Numb? I mean, you ask about being numb.
Yeah.
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 That's
Wow.
silly.
Wow. How long did it take you to realize that probably wasn't a good idea? 2 minutes after you got on the thing? Like, maybe this wasn't so smart?
No, I think once I got there, once
Looking
I got to Na Bay,
Yeah.
I realized that, you really shouldn't have done that. That was like an in-country R&R. I mean, these were all guys that we trained with,
Yeah.
and we were drinking beer like 20-year-old kids do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And showing off. a
And
little
were you
bit.
in Da Nang, or where did you
No,
go
I
in
think that's Vung Tau. That's also Vung Tau. They had something called in-country R&R as
Right.
well as your regular R&R.
Okay.
And you'd go to safe areas, and Vung Tau was very safe.
Okay.
So that's where that was.
Did you go outside for R&R as well? Or did
Yes,
you only
I
do-
went to Hawaii
Oh, went to
because I
Hawaii,
did
okay.
not want to be bothered by people trying to sell me stuff.
Oh, which,
I just wanted to go and be normal.
yeah.
So we
Yeah.
rented motorcycles in Hawaii and just had a ball. We all went in, trained together, went over together,
Yeah.
and then we did get relieved in sections. They didn't relieve everybody
They
at
didn't let
once.
you go together.
Mhm.
You said after 6 months you kind of realized that
Lost cause.
the war was a lost cause for a number of reasons. A main one being that the people of South Vietnam, not many of them seem to be devoted to the cause, and so it's,
And you saw what the enemy was doing.
yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah.
enemy was ferocious and dedicated.
You got a
and-
dedicated, ferocious enemy and a lackluster ally,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you put that together.
Mhm.
And so there's some sense of, my interpretation is there's some sense of, disillusionment that you felt during the war, and that you still feel when you think about the war. But I met you because you're wearing the hat, and the hat is visible there on
Yeah,
the
brown water Navy
yeah.
hat.
But help me to understand that, because it's common among Vietnam vets that there is that sense of, if regret is the right word, or disillusionment with the war, but there's also a desire to let people know I was there. And how does that
Well,
work?
because, when we got back, it was horrible. It was,
Yeah.
we were not treated well. I went home, and I expected there to be some dialogue, exchange, talk,
Yeah.
and that's what I wanted to do. Nobody was interested. I
Wow.
mean, just get out of here, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So I packed up and said, well, I've got to just go start another life, and that's what I did. So I
Wow.
moved to California, and then you didn't tell anybody. You just didn't say
Wow.
anything about it.
Yeah.
I did not join Vietnam Veterans for Foreign Wars. I didn't want anybody to know.
Yeah.
And
Did you, if you, caught wind that there was another Vietnam vet, would you connect, or really?
no, you had to, because it was such a difficult time going back.
Because
going
of all the
home.
protests
Yeah,
and all
well,
that
that
stuff.
and how people just kind of shunned you. I mean, my best friend was just, it was like nothing. Like we'd been buddies forever, and it was like nothing. He didn't want to have anything to do with me. And I was happy to be home, and I was, when we left Travis Air Force Base, and there were protesters out there, and they were throwing eggs and all that. I said, I don't care. I want to go home. I just want to go home. And certainly, the first Kuwait, Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and the response. Well, then people started coming around to Vietnam vets after that, where they wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
They wanted to know about it, and
Sure.
they thanked you for your. And now people thank me for my service.
I know from previous discussions that there are particular memories that you have that are, that are rough. Here's a question I've been asking vets lately, and so I'm interested in your response. If I had a magic potion, and you took a sip of it, and all of those bad memories would go away forever, would you take it? No. That's the exact same response I get from every single veteran. Why? Why do you want to keep them? Or why would you choose to keep them?
Well, if you asked me that in 1972, I would have. But with the help of time, and the VA has been very helpful to me. I've come to grips with all of that. And there were lots of good times too. I mean, for the longest time, that's the only memories that I had was the fun times. I'd kind of blocked the other stuff out. But I'm 70 years old, so I had to come to grips with it or suffer, and I didn't want to suffer.